Z HD3, or listen on the World Wide Web at WRDT560.com. The materials and information provided are for informational purposes only and are not intended for use as diagnosis, prevention, or treatment of a health or other problem, or as a substitute for consulting a licensed medical professional. Some concepts presented herein may be theoretical and have little or no scientific substantiation. Users are advised to conduct their own diligence.
Welcome to Ask the Experts, where you'll learn about a variety of life-enhancing subjects. Today we delve into holistic healing and
Mike's up.
Health Authority Jason Eagle of Strategic Healing.
Thank you.
And now here's Jason.
Indeed, and now here is Jason. Hi there, I am Jason Eagle, your Natural Health Authority. My company is Strategic Healing. That's my website is strategichealing.us. Right now, I am on Facebook Live. That's my Facebook page, which is Strategic Healing. And later, I post these shows because you can't rewind radio. I post these shows on YouTube. Pretty soon, we're going to have some podcasts, and I'll have a podcast station you can go to and all that stuff. Those different medias that younger people know about and older people should learn about. Again, it's you can't rewind radio, and so being able to have a different platform that you can go back and rewind it and listen to it anytime you want, that's what I do. So this is a show about health. My name is Jason Eagle. I am what's called a quantum reflex analysis practitioner, or QRA practitioner, soft tissue specialist. That means I work on your body as well. Things that would be considered like medical massage, that would be considered very specific types of bodywork techniques, including cranial sacral, trigger point therapy, these different types of working with your body in order to, again, sometimes things need to be moved. Sometimes things need to be touched. Some things needs to be put back in place. Sometimes muscles and tendons and all these things have to be relaxed, have to be moved. Sometimes your car has to be towed out of the ditch by a tow truck, So the QRA is all about testing your body for different, basically your chemicals. What is your, I remember, seeing television shows where, we watch them talk about, they said, well, maybe it's a chemical imbalance. I tell you, they don't test very well for that type of thing, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But today's show is all about anxiety, all about, and I have a take-home message. Like I had this recently, and I did something that worked overnight, like actually within 15 minutes. And I've been working with other people, and sometimes you forget about yourself, and I kind of put my own thinking cap on instead of going to see somebody. I said, well, I'm the person so I'll see myself. And I found the right trick. And I found there's a couple things I'm going to talk about that literally have made such a huge difference. Anxiety. What is anxiety? Feelings of anxiety or nervousness. Now, who has the right to feel like that? Like, I'm fine. Everything's good for me. I've got, have you checked? The world has gone crazy. Christians that are thinking about the end times, it's already, it's over. The world ended, right? And you'd think you would know. The reality is a little bit different. So people have to really, we are all being in a super stressful situation. And just because you handled it before, and just because you had some things that work for you, this is different. No one has seen the world like this before. And it is legitimate for people to kind of go, maybe I need help. Maybe this is too much for me to handle. And, if it comes to therapy, a person really needs to talk to a therapist and stuff like that. If it comes to chemistry and things like that, you want to get this figured out. But let me tell you, that's what I do here. And in terms of being able to help people's bodies, now people say, I want to help lose weight and, all these different types of things. And, my kidneys are causing some problems. What can you do for that? Real standard medical stuff that you would think, or standard health things. But, anxiety, meaning, let me just tell you personally, I've dealt with anxiety in my past, and as a child, I will tell you some of the I hated school. I mean, I love school. I love being at school, but I didn't do well as a student. And it's not that I wasn't smart. I didn't do well in grades. And I've been recently experiencing some anxiety where it's that the butterflies in your stomach, a feeling of anxiety or nervousness, often overwhelming, that come and go, even when not in stressful situations. Many may often occur with depression. So what I've been feeling in the past, let's say, probably a couple weeks, it's just been getting worse and worse. And I've been doing some things, trying things, and some of it worked, but things that have worked for me in the past is not working. I understand anxiety in terms of where you get to a point that says, I really need to see a doctor, or, they need to put me on some medication or something like that. That's what it felt like for me. And, basically, like I said, the butterflies that you just felt, the closest I could remember, and I was telling my wife this, that maybe it's this time of year, because at the end of the year, around August, I remember, as a child being anxious about going back to school. Summer's over and I got to go back to that. I got to go back to getting bad grades. I got to go back to, getting in trouble for this and that. I was the troublemaker. I have a buddy that I visited this weekend. And normally going to this place, I grew up on Walloon Lake, in Saginaw and Walloon Lake, and Walloon Lake is my place. It's like, there are certain places you can go to that if you just go there, it just... Whew, oh boy. And normally that would work. Even that was not working. I felt better, but it just was not covering this deep, that was growing inside in my belly, but I could felt it through my whole nervous system. And it was just this agitation that if you've had it, again, and I've had a panic attack before. I know what that is like. The blood pressure type of thing, in terms of you feel like your heart's going to blow out of your chest and stuff like that. This was different. This is literally, I had not really fully experienced. And the only thing that could remind me, like I said to my wife, was maybe it's just this time of year. Because a lot of times we go through cycles. Our body goes through hormonal cycles. So sometimes even with anxiety, it is the body remembers this time of year, these things happen. And even if it happened as a child, it's like, a rat in an experiment that gets shocked by certain things will get those feelings. The brain will remember that. And, it will, even though the shock may not be there, the memory of that. So if you got shocked with a blue ball, anyone that shows up with a blue ball, you're going to be cowering in the corner because your cells remember that. So I told her, I said, maybe it has something to do with that, because, this time of year, and sometimes people go through different types of malaises and things like that. Well, let me just cut to the chase. For me, it was two things, really one thing. So a lot of times it's like your adrenals are on adrenaline, meaning if you're living in a stressful situation, meaning you're living in like a post-traumatic stress, if you live in a war zone, your adrenal glands are pumping, and they're supposed to. You're supposed to be on high alert, but you can't live in high alert forever. Eventually, it'll just burn your system out. I'm going to cut to the chase, and for me, it was tyrosine. Tyrosine it's an amino acid, and I'll talk a little about later, but let me just, like I say, cut to the chase. I've tried, and I'll go over these things over the past week, what I've been trying, and maybe some of it kind of worked, but it didn't last, and it didn't really work. This one worked like a charm. Literally, I took 3 tyrosine yesterday and 3 tyrosine today, and within 15 minutes of taking the tyrosine throughout the rest of the day, it's gone. That whole thing, I'm back to myself, and I feel super powerful again, and that thing is gone. That means my body was deficient in the amino acids, and the amino acids are these things that, where do amino acids come from? This is, again, when I said you would think that the doctors would test for what's called, chemical imbalances. This is what they would look for in one of the chemical imbalances. The chemicals would be, number one, minerals. So is your potassium off? Is your sodium off? Is your magnesium off? But then we get into the other things that are really essential like that. and that's amino acids. And there's all these different types of amino acid, L-glutamine, L-tyrosine, boom, boom, boom. Where do amino acids come from? Amino acids come from protein, or come from foods that have protein in it. And amino acids help us to build proteins. You eat the steak or you eat the broccoli, and there's protein in that, and you need to get the fuel off of that protein and use those proteins as building blocks. But see, you use the amino acids that are in those proteins to make your own proteins. So let me cut to the chase on this one too, which is the proteins that we need to make are these things that are in the brain, these different things that would be called hormones, like for instance, serotonin and dopamine, and these things that like totally react to, or totally have everything to do with how you are thinking, how you're feeling, mood. So mood stabilizers, again, people can take the drugs, and one of the most common anti-anxiety medications type of things are these things called SSRIs, or serotonin reuptake, which is, you take them and it gets your body to, instead of throwing the serotonin away, to recycle it and put it back in because you're low on serotonin or dopamine or norepinephrine and all these different types of things. Well, proteins that have amino acids, the amino acids help us to build these things. We make factories, which is the factories in our body, and we make the hormones and all of the different neurotransmitters that we need, and we make them off the building blocks. But in times of stress, meaning when times are different, and times are different right now, and I thought I had really handled this stuff because, I'm not really panicked about what's going on in the world. But again, who knows what it is? What it is living the way, and I eat really, really well. If you haven't known, you can check out my Facebook page, Strategic Healing, and I have a farm. I live kind of like the Amish, which is I have my own animals, I have my own food, and I eat the best of the best. I make it myself, the best you could possibly do. But even what this means is I was not getting enough tyrosine, which is, there's a lot of tyrosine in the types of foods. But if your body is for instance, if you normally get a certain amount of staples, meaning when you have an office and you have, the secretary go out and once a month buy a box of staples. Well, if you're putting packages together where you're using, normally we use a box per week, okay? Well, we're going to use a box per hour because we're doing something. And so instead of buying that same amount of staples, you're going to have to buy a case. Instead of a case a month, you're going to need a case a week or a case a day. So that means the amount of the living environment, what I've been eating normally has not been covering it. And I needed an extra dose of tyrosine. And again, it's this amino acid, an amino acid that helps to build the neurotransmitters of things like GABA and the dopamine and these other things. When you get into tyrosine, and again, this is the thing that made a huge, huge difference. And I'm going to go over a whole list of all of the different things on anxiety. What could it be? And what could you do naturally to treat it? What could you take? What could you adjust in your diet? Because many of these things is you can just search out the foods that are high in tyrosine and eat those things. But again, my body was not getting enough of it because I need a ton, right? Tyrosine is a conditional essential amino acid. It is a precursor to the thyroid hormone thyroxine and a catecholamine neurotransmitters. Tyrosine also supports mood during times of occasional stress when dopamine and norepinephrine levels may need additional support. You think that could be now? Yes, it's now. There's another amino acid I'm going to talk about a little bit later too, L-glutamine. These can have some of the other effects as well too. So let me go into the story too of what do I know about anxiety. Now, I've never been I'll take that back. I was on what would be considered some sort of medication. That was when I was a child. Now, story of Jason. Meeting my friend that lives up north, and he says he watches my show, listens to my radio show every once in a while. When he's driving in the car, he puts it on or something like that, and he says that he still watches it from time to time and like says to himself, if you guys knew this guy, like the way he's talking and the things that, if you knew the Jason that I knew, you'd think that they just don't fit. I have definitely changed an awful lot, but not really. That's the person that I always was. Me in school was, I had a lot of testing anxiety, and I was fidgety and all this other stuff, and I was the class clown, and I got in trouble, and, you know, I was the kid that got spanked up there in class and then got spanked again when I got home for getting into trouble. And I laugh about it because it really didn't bother me. It didn't really hurt me. You know, I was not abused because that's just how I am, and they didn't know how to deal with me. And I remember a time when I was probably, I don't know, maybe third or fourth grade, when my mother, having the meetings with the teacher, said, we need to get the doctors involved. And I do remember that the doctors gave my mom Ritalin to give me some Ritalin, because maybe it was a hyperactive. And my mom said that she gave me one dose one day, and both the teachers and the mom said, nope, that's the wrong one, because I had the wrong reaction to it. It did the wrong thing for me, and it certainly was not going to work. It made things worse. I think either it turned me into a zombie but again, my mom and the teacher were both going, we tried, that's not it. So that's my experience with that. But then I also have experience in family members who are on, I have a family member I've been through the worst of the worst, which is literally the hospital where the mental institution, and talking to the doctors about, can't you help them? Like, what about this thing that we call a chemical imbalance, like I saw on the show? And they laugh. Chemical imbalance? That's on TV. Like, we're just going to try some drugs. Or institutionalize, and on and off and on and off. And I've seen it all. And I've seen the worst, a family member that has the worst case of it. And you would think that, like I said, with this chemical imbalance type of thing, most of these cases is they're just treated with drugs. And they're treated with, maybe a little behavior type of stuff and some therapy, stuff like that. But what if it is a chemical imbalance? What if it is that instead of the drugs, or in combination of the drugs, right? To eventually, you want the drugs to go away because you want to fix what the body, if it's a chemical imbalance, then that means the body's way that it's supposed to work with the primary things, which would be minerals and amino acids. If those things are off, couldn't we just take those, and couldn't that make the difference? So let me go over what anxiety, classical anxiety. These would be, where people could put on Xanax and Prozac and all this other stuff. Well, there's another way to go. And the way to go would be really looking at this, what you would call kind of chemical imbalances and things like that. And if you're going to try anything, how about trying some nutritional supplements that work as well or better, by far better. I'm not zoned out, like I'm happy again and I feel myself again. And it was just quick. So one of the things that anxiety on a biochemical or let's take it from my perspective, from a natural level, meaning what's going on in the body, maybe something's missing. It's often linked to weak adrenals, liver stress from exposure to toxic chemicals, foods, and later I'll talk about what those toxic chemicals, because sometimes, especially with even with autism and some of these other things, and attention deficit, could it be that we need to remove something? Could it be that they're being poisoned? Because a brain, especially a child's brain, can have, if you gave them the wrong poison, you would spin them up like they're on a drug, like they are on, and those are these food additives types of things that removing them, and not just from a kid, from an adult, maybe your brain's being poisoned, okay? Especially chemical foods, acidic pH, which is deficient mineral status, infection, often linked to parasitic and anxiety. If anxiety is worse at night, that's one of the things that, like in my practice, is like, if it's like, when do you have it? Really, it happens at night. Like I'm fine during the day, but I'm just like paranoid at nighttime when I can't fall asleep. Maybe a lot of times that, especially people when they'll talk to, If I really sat down and charted this, like my worst times are around the full moon. When it gets to the new moon or when the moon, in between the phases, I'm fine, But like watch out for like say alcoholics that have this. Like I said in times past, which is, talk to a bar owner, person who owns a bar, or a bouncer, or a person who's a police officer or a paramedic, and they will tell you that like tragedy follows the phases of the moon. Because it's number one, that's why they called it a lunatic. So back in the day, crazy person was called a lunatic because Luna stands for moon, Luna. So, like howling at the moon. Well, not really, just like, getting in trouble, domestic abuse, these types of things. There are patterns. Well, one of the things that we know about these patterns, it's the chemicals that that is the pattern. And some of the chemicals or hormones, if you will, can be coming from the ebb and flow of life forms, bacteria, parasites in particular. So at the full moon, their numbers increase and they tend to go on a feeding frenzy and they grow like crazy. And if they're growing, then they literally are sending all these different chemicals through our body that literally are like hormones. And I've even talked about it before that you can basically say they create thoughts. They can create that thought in your head that where, the song gets stuck in your head or, kind of like the back in the cartoon days where they showed the angel on one side and the devil on the other side. Many people say, I feel like it's that, and I feel like I'm stuck in between. And a lot of times it can be these other life forms, which would be parasites and viruses and bacteria. And they do follow, sometimes they follow temperatures in terms of in the wintertime. So again, look out for the flu hitting in the wintertime when you can't be outside and you got to be inside when the air is recirculating. Well, you're rebreathing the same air and creating a really good environment for certain types of things to grow. So these are these different things where this could be this. Some of the common feelings are feelings of anxiety or nervousness, often overwhelming, that may come and go, right? Even when not in stressful situations. Like I'm sitting with my family when I normally would be happy, and I feel it's like the ticking time bomb, like something's waiting for the other shoe to drop. Meaning there's no reason, a panic attack or something like that when a monster's chasing you, that's understandable, right? But when like it's all at peace and everything's good and you're warm and cozy, no, that doesn't make sense, okay? So one of the top things that when we get into how the body works is number one could be adrenals. Now, your adrenal glands are these glands that sit up on top of your kidneys, and so they're also linked to kidney function as well. Adrenals, like your kidneys, help to regulate the amount of fluids that are in your body, meaning if you are well hydrated or dry or something like that. Okay? So, but the adrenals are the things, when do you feel your adrenals? When someone like pops a balloon behind you and you arch your back like a cat and then suddenly your blood pressure goes up, that's your adrenals. And you go, okay, that's appropriate, okay? Well, stressful situations, if you live in a stressful, even a conceived, meaning everything's around you, but you can't calm yourself down, right? And go, listen, there's nothing you can do about it right now. And, there's money in the bank account, blah, blah, blah. There's no reason to panic. That's normal. A person should be able to kind of like situationally things go through things because you can't live in a panic state. But, the things that adrenals would be is if it is adrenals, then we can take some things for the adrenals and the kidneys. So if it is adrenal function, that's where we try what's called the AdrenaVen, and that helps, it's food for the adrenals. It helps to support the adrenals, and the ReneVen too. Now, adrenal also links to what we call another thing that would be anxiety is cardiac, meaning if your blood pressure is too high or your heart is pumping too fast or your blood is creating too much pressure in your veins, That can also be because that's a signal that your body is used to that signal, meaning something must be going on. If your heart is pumping, that means we must be running away from a bear or something like that. And so your whole system is geared towards when your blood pressure is elevated or your heart rate is elevated, something must be wrong. And so the body is going to naturally adjust a whole bunch of other systems in terms of increase adrenal function, change of body temperature. This is where it gets into the hypothalamus and hormones and all this other stuff. So one of the things too that I've seen that, again, if it's more the cardiac, meaning it's more your heart stress, then that's where we get into things. Number one things that I've seen with people, which is if you have let's say you have a heart rate that is normally, a person that is right around 50 to 60, 50 is good. 60 beats a minute, about a normal person everything's about 50 to 60. That's a really healthy person. But you get a person who they feel like they're relaxed and they're not panicked or anything like that, and they're like 80 beats a minute. That's bad because, that really 80 beats a minute for a normal person, if you have that means something's going on. Then we start to get up to, let's say, 114 beats a minute, or like when you're running, okay? When a person's jogging, when you get up to right around 115, 130, that's okay because you're jogging. And many people, like the weight loss, which is, we're talking heart rate, which is how fast, boom, 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 how fast your heart beats. If your heart beats right around, most people, average persons, between 115 to 130, that is your target zone for losing weight. So let's say you're not exercising, you're just sitting there on the couch and you're around 115 beats a minute. That means your body is going to use resources as if it was like running. And eventually it will break your body down. This is where things like tyrosine and glutamine, these amino acids, come in, because if you ate up all that stuff and it's gone, right? There's not enough to go around, right? Now, cardiac, sometimes it is linked to what's called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is in the bloodstream. And if we have low nitric oxide levels, then that's a thing that your body says, well, you're not getting enough oxygen, so turn the pump on faster. And in fact, squeeze the blood through faster. So the fermented beets, which is this powder that you can take, and normally you take about 1 scoop, but if a person, like, say, checks and they feel like they should be relaxed, but their heart rate, they feel like their heart is pounding in their chest or something like that, you can take the fermented beets and about 2 to 3 scoops right away, and within an hour, the person's bloodstream or the blood pressure, or including the heart rate, goes back down to normal. Because what happens is now you have more oxygen inside the bloodstream, therefore the heart doesn't have to beat as fast, right? Another thing that's related to anxiety, this shows all about anxiety. What are the possible things that could be related to your anxiety? Resveratrol. I've seen this with a person that was having irregular heartbeats, and we tried everything until finally we found, tried the resveratrol. The body tested for that, and basically 1 teaspoon of that was it. It fixed the heart, where literally blood pressure was good and everything. It was just not beating the way it's supposed to. Why resveratrol? Resveratrol, that's one of the things that they say is in red wine. It's in the red grape skins. It's the resveratrol that we use comes from giant knotweed. And the reason is because we don't like to use grapes, because grapes have a lot of pesticides in them. And getting organic grapes, again, there can be some side effects that kind of come from that. But that's why they say the glass of wine is indicated. The red wine has been related to people getting their blood pressure down, people getting their cholesterol levels. And, that's why many of the doctors say, yes, if you could get a glass of red wine. Now you get the alcohol and the sulfites and stuff like that, which some people do not react well to. That's why I recommend the resveratrol, which is, if you want to get that thing that's good for your heart, you can get it in a different form, that you're taking 1 little teaspoon of it as opposed to having a glass of wine, and you're getting a superpower amount. This is cardiovascular. So adrenals is the first thing that it could be. Cardiac, meaning your heart. That's where we got into the beets and the resveratrol. The next part that it could be is minerals. Okay, now I've personally had this, and just even a couple of weeks ago when it's hot out and I'm sweating buckets outside because I'm working out on the garden during the weekend. You know, it was like almost 100 degrees out, and I come inside and go and get a glass of water, and like, I feel weird. I feel strange, right? A little bit dizzy and stuff. And then that's where my wife reminded me, and then I remind myself, did you do your salt? Did you take, because in my family, we put salt in our water. And that's what I did, is I took, let's say, a half teaspoon of salt and put it in a big glass of water and drank it down. And within seconds, oh, yeah, that's it. I felt a lot better. Another one of these minerals. And again, during this time, like I said, this anxiety that I've been going through, I tried all of these things and they didn't work. Meaning that the tyrosine worked for me. That's what I'm going to, talk about today too, which is like, you can go boom, boom, boom. And when you find the right fit, that's the thing. And that tells you that's what's going on with your chemistry. Magnesium. Sometimes the blood pressure, your muscles are too tight, and that forces your blood pressure up. And it makes your muscles too tight. And sometimes anxiety is also coupled with these tight shoulder, tight muscles. Now, for me, it wasn't. Shoulders kind of feel good, meaning that if you touched me when I'm really tight, the muscles feel really like hard rocks. My muscles have been relaxed. So, and I did take magnesium, and like last week, I was like, well, maybe it's magnesium, and I took some extra doses of magnesium, and it worked for maybe a little bit, but it didn't really work. It didn't really make it go away. So, for me, that was not it. So the minerals are these things in terms of, if a person's dealing with anxiety, maybe you have low minerals, the magnesium and essential salt in terms of sea salt. Now, in Germany, I will tell you, Germany are the manufacturers of some of the best drugs in the world, including anti-anxiety medications. But in Germany, they really have a good healthcare system, and they understand the linkage of nutrition. And from what I understand is the German doctors have essentially a rule to follow, which is if a person comes in for anxiety and things like that, in other parts of the world, they would just go, okay, go home, take this Prozac, take these anti-anxiety medications. Well, they can do that, but they can't do that until, I think it might be 2 weeks or something like that. They have to put you on a B complex. Let's try a B complex, because they found huge cases where the medication was not necessary. It was just people were low in B vitamins. Where do we get B vitamins? The same thing in amino acids. We get them from foods. We get them from protein. So one of the top ones that many people are deficient in is B12. Get a B12 shot, okay? And I've seen this personally where I worked. I took a little break one summer when the movies were here in town, and some buddies of mine, we built a catering company. And we were a craft service catering company for the movie industry, which means we picked up and we followed them around, and we had to cook for them and everything like that. It was hard. And, many of these movies were there 3 o'clock in the morning on a shot, right? And that's after we had shown up at 5:30 in the morning, and then we had to be again for breakfast. And then, we'd go for days, and many of the actors and the crew members. And I remember one set, they literally had some nurses come in, and they came with B12 shots. Now, I didn't take the B12 shot because I had my max stress B. I had my complete B. That's what I'm telling you about, natural. But these people that were working 2-3 days straight, a B shot, B12 shot, boom, they were picked up. Like, boom, it just gave them energy. So one of the top things that has been linked with a lot of anxiety and depression has been B vitamins. So one of the best sources of B vitamins is this max stress B. It's all of the B vitamin, but it has high levels of the B12 in their what's called end chain forms, meaning it's the form that your body would produce that in. So even when a person got that B12 shot, the body doesn't, that injection, the body can't use that. The body takes that, especially if it's what's the most common form, which is called cyanocobalamin. The body has to turn it into other different forms, Okay, so it can't use even many of the pills that we take. Now, the type of B vitamins that we have, Premier Research Labs, is the Max Stress B or the Complete B, which is these pills that you take. It's all of the B vitamins in their end-chain forms, meaning your body doesn't have to use any of its energy to convert it. Boom, it's better than food because you eat B vitamins in foods that are high in B vitamins. Your body still has to convert those things with amino acids and turn them into the B vitamins. Well, if you can get them in end-chain forms, boom, you've just satisfied that and you made a huge, huge difference. And it goes directly into the bloodstream right in your mouth. Another one is the Gallbladder ND. If people have anxiety that includes insomnia, they can't fall asleep. Their brain won't stop. Or they fall asleep and then they wake up at like 3 a.m. and it's almost like a bell went off and they're exhausted, but they can't fall asleep. That's typically the gallbladder. So Gallbladder ND is something that provides the B vitamins that many times if we have anxiety that's based upon a B complex deficiency, you're going to notice it right away. These are things that, if that's you, if you have a deficiency in these different types of things, how do you know? Because when you took it, it worked that quickly. Like the tyrosine that I took, it worked that quickly. And I can't tell you how different I feel today. This is the second day of taking it. I feel so much better. So much better. And thank God. Thank you, Creator, that not only created my body to work this way and the world. These are things that I brought into my life that came from the world, the foods. But thank you for the wisdom. Thank you for the wisdom that the simple things can be found and they can work. They work like you would expect a drug to work. It's amazing. One of the other things that's really linked with a lot of anxiety is hormones. Hormones. Your hormones are off. I mean, people say, I got a thyroid condition. That's a hormone condition. Oh, I've got perimenopause. Oh, that's a hormone condition. So if your hormones are off, and hormones of the serotonin, melatonin turns into serotonin, dopamine, all of these things. If you don't know what I'm talking about, these are the happy hormones. And then the depression hormones of cortisol and this other stuff, we need these. We need these all in balance. But if you got way too much cortisol, again, the person like a cortisol, too much cortisol and not enough dopamine, you're going to feel that like electricity is running through you. Like that's the OCD person where they just can't stop. No, you don't understand. Like I'm running around like a crazy rabbit and that's the only thing that keeps me from exploding. I can't stop. So that would be hormones. One of the best hormone things is this product called Adaptogen. Adaptogen are all these different herbs that help to support hormones in terms of your hormones. And the reason they're called adaptogens is because they adapt. It's almost as if the herbs in adaptogen are smart, meaning I can haul it away from you if you got too much, or I can deliver it to you if you don't have enough. It's great. And so the adaptogens help to, if you're too high, you got too many of these hormones, they will lower these ones. And if your hormones are too low, they will help to raise these ones. So adaptogens are great for, like I said, the hormonal type of thing. Another thing that is in the hormone level, and I've tried this too, is the hemp. This is the endocannabinoids. Now the endocannabinoids, which is people going, I don't know about that hemp stuff. I don't know about that weed stuff. It's how our body is made. Our neurotransmitters in terms of and in particular, it's the gut brain. So a lot of times when people do have these butterflies in the stomach, taking the hemp, which provides the CBD, the endocannabinoids, as well as a whole host of all these other ones, some of the THC, some of the terpenes, and different levels of CBD. There's A, B, C. There's all these different types. In the hemp extract that we provide, which is the cleanest, best, because it comes from a CO2 cold extraction, which it doesn't destroy any of this stuff. It doesn't squish these hemp plants and these fine, delicate oils and damage them. It preserves them in a way so that when they come, and so the endocannabinoids are like a hormone. Let me remind people, the highest forms of endocannabinoids, if you're hearing stuff about this hemp, I don't want to take that and I'm never going to, and I don't, if you were born and you breastfed off of your mother, you got endocannabinoids. I can't even say them. You got endocannabinoids. The highest form of the what's called external. Endo means outside. Endo means outside of a system. So the cannabinoids, which are really supposed to be inside, they're part of how our brain works. They're out there in the world. And if they come from the outside and go into the inside, then your body, the highest form of endocannabinoids is not hemp, is not marijuana, is not this. It is actually human breast milk. So if you were born the way that our Creator intended, you came out of the birth canal and you got an immune system from the mother's mucosal membranes and stuff like that. That was the very first one. Then the very next one came from the breast milk, and the very first breast milk had colostrum, which is your mother donated to you a full informational, like a download of what to do if this happens, what to do if infection comes in and wants to infect you and take over your ship. This is what you do. And so the immunoglobulins that are in human breast milk are essentially an immune system. The mother gives, like in the Star Wars, where the plans for the Death Star, like how do we destroy this thing? Here's the plans. They have to be passed on. That's what is in human breast milk. That would be, let's say, the colostrum. But the other thing that's in human breast milk is what's called the endocannabinoids. And that is essentially the mother, if a baby cries, I'm just going to describe it like this. What are the endocannabinoids? They're part of how the nervous system works, and they're part of how what's called the parasympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic nervous system is chill out. It's okay. It's, suck your thumb and go to bed and rock yourself to sleep. Now, the mother can do that if a baby's crying or in pain, touch. So not just touch from the mother, but touch from anybody, but in particular, touch. That's why when you stub your toe, you touch it, you grab onto it, because within pain, it's what's called the gate theory, which is when you add a soft touch or a brushing or a blowing. That's why little kids, when they, like when you're going to peel the Band-Aid off, blow on it. Because the blowing, what it does is causes more stimulus, and it takes your mind, it takes the neurologic mind off of the pain point. So what the endocannabinoids are is the mother gives the baby in its breast milk, when it goes into the system, and it builds up this thing inside of the belly that if I'm not here with you, baby, and I can't cuddle you, here's how I do it, and you can do it for yourself. So many times babies that are not breastfed they can be inconsolable, and you can get a essentially broken nervous system because you don't know how to calm your stuff down. You never had that mother, right? Even though she was there, but she wasn't. And because it's a chemical. So this is where the endocannabinoids come in. And if you were born without being breastfed, or after being breastfed, somewhere along the lines, especially as a kid, you were given lots of antibiotics, you killed these things off and they're gone. So this is one of the roles where hemp comes in, is because these endocannabinoids is, if you take them inside your body, it basically reprograms that part of your nervous system. Well, I did that, and that didn't really help. So what helped me was the tyrosine. And I'll explain that a little bit later too. Now, the other thing that is hormones is, let's go back to, as I said, is maybe you have a parasite. The people that tend towards being cyclical, or basically the people that are up and down, roller coastery, and in particular, if it's a pattern to it on a monthly basis, women that tend to get the really bad, not menopause, but really bad menstrual cramps, or the PMS, which is, some women, literally, it's like, the story goes, like, she goes nuts. Like, everyone should stay away from her, like, the week before her period. And she knows well enough to put herself away, right? Because she's going to bite everybody's head off. Well, what if she can't, she can't help it because it's a chemical thing. Well, what if some of these cyclical things are also, again, what is cyclical is the hormones. And so if a person's, in particular, the hormones are off, which is related to liver function. So the women that tend to have really bad cramps and polycystic ovarian syndrome, or have really bad, let's say, PMS, most of the time it's number one linked to a liver. Your liver is jammed up and you have a very toxic liver. So women that have cleaned up their liver function have gotten so much relief from that. And number two, women and men and just any human that is been able to address these parasites. So I would say a good thing to do is, if you're dealing with anxiety, this is another thing to add to the mix, which is a little bit of the Parastat and a little bit of the Paratocin. We're starting to notice, we used to give it only to people where they tested and they said, we really are dealing with the parasite. Well, we're finding that many people dealing with anxiety or energy level, different types of things, hormone levels, if you just go on a little bit of the Parastat and a little bit of the Paratocin, meaning 1 or 2 of each of them per day, it's enough to go into the system and basically just shut these things up. Basically enough to really put like a full court press against these parasites that may be creating these hormones that are floating around your body, that's your anxiety, okay? Now, we also get into another thing, which would be digestion. Sometimes people's digestion is so off that their guts are so messed up. And I'm going to add to this digestion. So sometimes it's what you're eating. And if you are eating chemicals and here, let me go over this. If you deal with anxiety, if you deal with depression, one of the first things that I would tell a person is take these out of your life. Number 1, aspartame. What's that aspartame? That's fake sugar. That is Diet Coke. That is Diet Pepsi. That is gums. A lot of times when you look at the gum, it has these things called aspartame, which is one of the fake sugars. And then they have this other really long name, which is called phytoneutronics or something like that. These are essentially brain hormones. How does it work? There is no sweetness in it. Same thing with MSG, monosodium glutamate. Take that out of your diet. Do not eat it at all. And they'll trick you because they'll call them natural flavors. So anything that says and natural flavors, if you're dealing with depression, don't eat it. Get it out. So how they work is so where is sweet? It's kind of like this one. I just thought about this the other day. In Willy Wonka, he said this one, which is, where is fancy bread? In the hearth or in the head? So what that means is, okay, let me describe that. Fancy bread, which is, think about anybody has their idea of fancy bread, which is really sweet type of bread, or like the challah bread or whatever. It doesn't matter, which is a person who's never eaten what you would call fancy bread. They have an imagination. And if I say fancy bread, what's fancy bread? So if it's in the head, meaning you have an imagination, you imagine, or is it really the real bread? Okay, so this is an analogy in terms of many times what's going on inside our brain. Okay, let me bring that back to this artificial sugars. When you taste sugar, you taste it in your brain. You taste it on your tongue, okay? And so sweet is sweet, okay? But they figured out how the brain works in terms of sweet. And when you eat aspartame, which is the thing that's in Diet Coke, right? And there's a number of other different ones. It's a drug. And what it does is it turns on the sweet switch in your brain, neurotransmitters. There's no sweet in it whatsoever, but it tricks the brain into believing it's sweet, right? So there, again, where is fancy bread? In the hearth or in the head? So with aspartame, it's all in the head. It's all in the brain. Well, but what it does is it really messes the brain up. It can really alter the brain chemistry. And if you eat it every day, you get the kid that's eating Doritos or something like that every day, which is, it has lots of monosodium glutamate. Or you get people that are using that yellow sugar or the artificial sugar. And I've seen people at, let's say, Starbucks, and they put like 4 or 5 of those packets in there. That is crazy, I'm telling you, because I understand the chemistry. That you are playing with your brain, and you don't want to do that. And so the very first thing to remove are these fake sugars. Because again, if your anxiety is in your brain, like, you need some more dopamine and you need some more of these other things. Like, again, what people would think that the anti-anxiety medications are, if you are drinking Diet Coke or eating, like, the standard gums, like the sweet breath gum or the breath, it has these things that you can't pronounce on it. That stuff's dangerous. That's very bad. And I would say the first place to start with that is if you're dealing with depression, you're dealing with anxiety, you're dealing with these, mood swings, get those things out, okay? Then the next thing would be the brain, which is sometimes the brain chemistry, especially if these things have been in your diet, they've messed your brain up, and your brain is stuck like that. How do I undo my brain? Tranquinol. Tranquinol has these different herbs, and one of them is called Valerian Root. Valerian Root, again, you can take Tranquinol to fall asleep. It's a good one if you feel like, golly, I can't fall asleep. Or tomorrow is going to be a big day. Can I take something like a sleeping pill? But I don't want to take a sleeping pill. I don't want to make sleeping pills also mess up your brain. Tranquinol are these natural different herbs, these different flowers and supplements. But what they also do is they unscramble the neurotransmitters. So if your brain has been messed up because of these things, and again, let's say a person has been in an anti-anxiety medication, do not go off of them all of a sudden. Like, you need to step down. You have to be very, very carefully. And Tranquinol has been, both Tranquinol and hemp have been shown to, you take those with the anti-anxiety medications, and then you slowly go down until eventually you get off of them, and you are then on the Tranquinol and the hemp, and eventually you can go off of those too. But sometimes you can even take Tranquinol, for instance, if you know you're going to be in a really stressful situation, or even during the middle of the day. And I did this, and it really worked for me. And I've done it before. Like, my wife, she hates the dentist, right? She hates the orthodontist, and it's really hard on her. But she's learned, if she knows that she's going to go, and she would like for me to sit there and hold her hand. But because of what's going on in the world, they won't let me in. They won't let me sit there and hold her hand. And so she has to go there without a net. And she has panic attacks. So what she's been doing is taking Tranquinol before, and I know a number of other people that before they go into a dental thing or something else, high anxiety type of thing, they take some the night before, and then some, a couple hours before they go to their appointment, and some right before they walk in the door. And you can take 4, 5, 6 of these, and it's not going to make you pass out. It's not going to make you dizzy. It's not going to make you feel like you're on drugs. They feel like it really reduced the anxiety, and it really helps. So Tranquinol is a very, very powerful thing that can be used to unscramble the brain from the things that have scrambled the brain, but also to help to really support. There's 2 other things, CardioVen and NeuroVen. These help to, if it is the brain, or and then another one called Cognitropic. So there's 3 things that really are all about, like, maybe it's really just this brain chemistry type of stuff. As I said, tyrosine and L-glutamine, these things will help you to rebuild these. If you do your research on what could be going on with the brain, meaning legitimately, I need to take something. So what are these things? They alter the different neurotransmitters, like I said, of the dopamine, the GABA, the serotonin, melatonin, these different types of things, right? Because if those things are off, you're not going to feel right. And you need to fix that. And you can feel like something's really, really wrong. So as I said, that was what I used. And I've used all of these things. Now, let me also tell you, like this last week, I've been concerned about this, and I've been trying everything that I know to do. And that means I've been doing my prayers. Because many times Prayer was all I needed. I just needed to spend some time with my Creator and be like, you're right. It's okay, right? Wasn't working. Meditation. Listening to some singing bowls, singing bowls are a really great practice that these tones can really help to modulate your brain waves and really help. Did that, wasn't working. Okay. Went to a place where normally it would calm me down. Like all I needed to go is and get into that water of Walloon Lake, and it didn't work. Okay. Again, talking with my wife about it, sometimes you need to get it off your chest. It didn't work. These things helped a little bit, but this was different. This was something that was like, something's really going on. And thank God I was able to find the tyrosine. And I also took some AdrenaVen too. That helps to support my adrenals. But it's made such a dramatic difference. Now, I've had times in my life where it was kind of like this, it wasn't like this, but it was the magnesium. I've had times where it was just like, take some magnesium, put it in a glass of water and drink it down. And it made such, that's why one of the magnesiums I really like is this Calm. It's like a fizzy type, like an Alka-Seltzer that Grandpa used to take. You put some powder in some water and it fizzes up and it tastes all lemony. The one I like is this lemon raspberry called Calm. I've had that work really well for me, where it was just like, I just couldn't relax. My muscles were tight. Took my magnesium or took an Epsom salt bath. I've had where I've taken the Epsom salt bath and it was really my muscles that were really tight. I was low in magnesium. And not only did it help to relax my muscles, but it relaxed my mind. And so this one was different, okay? But these are the things that we could try. I've had it where, and I'm talking about personal story, right? Today is all about me. Another one that I've taken for digestion have been ginseng and noni. If your digestion is really off, meaning the L-glutamine, the ginseng and noni, sometimes it's an allergy. So sometimes meaning an anxiety, if a person, let's say, eats because like the kids with the peanut allergy or something like that, they can tell you, number one, you can have a histamine reaction where your throat swells up, but you can also have, a person has, let's say, a food allergy and it puts them into a panic or it puts them into an immediate manic phase, and say what you would call manic depressive, or the other way, a person can eat a food that they're allergic to, and you can immediately go into that deep, dark depression where I just can't get out of this hole. Well, that's an allergy, and the ginseng and the noni and the L-glutamine help to treat that. Meaning, if it's something you swallowed that's poisonous to you, this will help to neutralize it. This will help to get it out of the system. That will help to literally clean that out and bring your body back to where your guts are not flooding with all of these different immune system hormones, because that's what an allergy is you ate a poison, swallowed, breathed, ate a poison. Now, sometimes what are some of the other poison? A thought could be a poison. You know what also could be a poison? An image could be a poison. You see something that you wish you could not see, that you can unsee. I remember the first time that I saw some pictures of the Holocaust as a kid, and it came on TV, and it changed me. Like, when you find out that the world and people can be this evil, and that's what's happening right now, is people are finding out a bunch of stuff, and you need support. We might need support, and that could be one of the things is when you see an image or hear a sound or literally, see what's going on in the world. There are people that are looking at what's going on in the world in terms of what's happening in these cities and going, it's the end of the world. It's the end. How much worse can it get? And how do you know how you're going to feel? You don't know how you're going to feel. Like if it's suddenly the bomb went off, like how do you know that your heart won't stop because you're just panicked, right? People, that's where we're living right now. So that's why I'm talking about today, which is take it serious. And again, if it's really serious, go to, contact a doctor, right? If you really are having a panic attack. Many times there are many people that have a heart attack. And some of the recent research has stated that it's not the classic heart congestive failure or it's not the heart clog. It's they had a panic attack. And literally but see, if it's a panic attack, And if it's a panic attack that comes from not having the right amount of hormones or not having enough of the minerals or something like that, you can fix that. Again, let me leave you with one thing, which is this happens in front of us every day. I've told you the value of salt, the value of sodium chloride. When a paramedic comes and picks you up from a person that had a heart attack or any type of traumatic thing, on the gurney, on the way to the ambulance, in the ambulance, or as soon as they get into the emergency room, most people have something inserted into their arm, which is some sort of fluid in that bag, and that's dripping into their body. What is that first fluid? Almost 100% of the time, that is sodium, meaning salt. Because if people are in a panic state and your salt levels, your sodium levels have crashed, your heart's going to pump all over the place. And so again, that shows how important the basic things that are in front of us. That's why I drink my salt. That's why I take my magnesium. And that's why I found the tyrosine. And it's been such a lifesaver for me. So real foods, real living things out there can be better than this drugs. They can be better than that. So until next time, if you have any questions, this is Jason Eagle, 734-985-5891. Until next week, bye-bye.
You've been listening to Ask the Experts with Jason.
You're all set? Thank you.
Jason
Thank
will
you.
help you live a pain-free, high-energy, healthier life naturally. As a certified practitioner in multiple healing modalities, Jason creates a finely tuned and highly personalized program just for you that will get you back to living your best life. Get started today by calling 734-985-5891 to make your appointment, or go online to strategichealing.us. Strategic Healing is located at 2545 North Opdyke Road, Suite 106A in Auburn Hills. Ask the Experts with Jason Eagle of Strategic Healing can be heard every Wednesday at 1 p.m. right here on WRDT, the Word Station.
AM 560 is Detroit.